Well, the idea is to pick these countries off. And Zbigniew Brzezinski, in his book Grand Chessboard in 1998, he said that the key area to control the world is what he calls Eurasia. And Eurasia is basically Europe across to China and then down into the Middle East. And what we've seen, Alex, over the last many, many years is that process of picking off the key areas of Eurasia, and now they're moving into Africa. What they want, for a start, is to take the whole of those North African countries over: Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, where, of course, they've had the trouble. There's now protests in Jordan and Syria. They're the target countries too. They've got Iraq. They're in there. And then, bingo, there's the big one to the right of Iraq, Iran. Then they're already in Afghanistan. They're totally coldly destabilizing Pakistan, and then just off that map you're hitting the Chinese border, and these countries are being systematically targeted. And what they're doing in the Muslim world is playing off the divisions going back, goodness me, tell me it's not true, to the 7th century between the Shia Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. And the reason that Saudi Arabia and people like the United Arab Emirates are being allowed to go into Bahrain and create and commit terrible atrocities to suppress the people's rebellion in Bahrain, and be allowed to do it with no reaction and no condemnation while everything's targeted on Libya, is because they want to play Saudi Arabia, that is overwhelmingly a Sunni Muslim country, and others around it. They want to use them in their targeting of Iran, which is really the center of the Shiite Muslim world. It's dominated, Iran, by Shiite Muslims. And so if they get Iran, this is the irony, if they get Iran by using Saudi Arabia and these others to support that, then Saudi Arabia will be the next one to go, because there won't be any use to the cabal and the agenda anymore. And at the moment we've got this extraordinary situation, really, where the United Arab Emirates has sent planes to join the NATO force to protect civilians, it says, in Libya, while at the same time they've sent their troops into Bahrain to stop civilians with protests with violence. In Libya, what's happening there now, Alex, is a classic a kind of accumulation of so many things that pull this together. First of all, Libya, and I've got no brief for Colonel Gaddafi. I want all dictators to disappear, but if we're going to be streetwise, we have to see the shades of grey within the black and white that is given to us on the television news. And they have a central bank which issues the currency, and if you do business with Libya, you go through the central bank. That's the last thing this cabal of global bankers want, and it is no accident that, these rebels who kind of appeared out of nowhere, and there'll be genuine people among them who want to end that Gaddafi oppression, but they're just walking into another oppression if they're not streetwise, which they're not. But within those rebels, there's no way that the cover story is adding up. When you've got people apparently being bombed from the sky, and there's a no-fly zone to help them, and all that stuff, and yet at the same time, this rebel group have managed to create a new Libyan central bank, and also a new Libyan oil company. They've already signed an oil deal with Qatar, and the European Union has said to Egypt, after this so-called revolution that wasn't, that, of course, if you make the necessary economic reforms, then we'll give you loans, which will put you massively in debt to us, and that's the idea. So the idea is to take over these countries, and any that are not totally kind of sucked in and absorbed by the global banking system, well, they will be. That's the idea. That's why Libya's being targeted and not the other countries, but they will be in the end. And the key one they want is Iran, because that's vital not just to control of the region, but also it's in that area around the Caspian Sea, going up to Georgia, another George Soros Brzezinski revolution, put that guy Sharkasvali in, who's just a front man for him, and all these other countries around the Caspian Sea where there are fantastic reserves of oil and gas. So if this map, if people carry it around with them or keep it with them, they can unless something intervenes here, they can start ticking these countries off. I was looking at this the other day. In Britain, they were making statements earlier on in this Libyan operation saying they wouldn't arm the rebels. And then suddenly, when the rebels started getting pushed back, it was like, oh, well, we can't rule it out. We can't take it off the table. The thing is, if this rebel army, or whatever you want to call it, does not take the country, and they're clearly not going to take the country the way things are going or anything like, then they'll just up the ante and up the ante and up the ante and go back on assurances that they had before, because the idea is to take the country, and that's what the whole thing's about. And it's got so ludicrous. I mean, the thing is so ludicrous that the commander of the NATO operation, speaking in Europe, I think it was a few days ago, he said that they were there to protect civilians, and so they would also attack the rebels if they were killing civilians. Well, it's now been shown very clearly. There's another story today about this, and another example, that NATO bombers have been killing civilians. So did NATO bomb themselves now in retaliation? I mean, the whole thing's insane. But what we're seeing, what you mentioned earlier about the mind game, over the years, you see where they'll say sugar's bad for you, and that sugar's bad for you, and then they'll come out and say, well, no, sugar's not bad for you, and all this stuff. And I remember my mother going years back where she used to say, oh, they tell you this, and then they tell you that, I can't be doing with it. And people switch off because they're given this constantly reversed information. It's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad. And eventually they're looking for a switch-off point, and that's what's going on with all this mind game. This is why they're saying ludicrous things like radiation of fantastic levels is good for you, and then it's bad for you, and then it's good for you, and eventually people switch off and think, I can't be doing with it. And what's that? It's a form of acquiescence. They've stopped taking part in the game, stopped taking part in the situation, and become acquiescent to it.
If you look back at the run-up to the Iraq War, I many years ago pushed the point back through research where the decision was made to invade Iraq at that time in, 2003, years before it happened. And as evidence has come to light since then, even the mainstream media has pushed back the decision to invade Iraq at that time, when the decision was taken through Bush and Blair, not by them actually, it's not the way it works, but at least a year. And in the days and hours before the invasion happened, you had Tony Blair in this country saying, we still hope to avoid a military conflict. He knew years before that it was going to happen at that time. And that's what we're seeing here. And, I'm not seeing the unfolding information in America that you're seeing, sitting at the moment, sitting here in Britain. But if you watch the scenarios, you had a situation where Saddam Hussein was told, do this or else. And he said there are no weapons of mass destruction. They're not there. And they, oh no, he's not allowing the inspectors in. People among the inspectors were saying, actually, it's not a problem. We can do it. Because once the decision is made, this is what's going to happen. It doesn't matter what anyone says, what the target says, what the target does, because it's going to happen. They just will not take no for an answer, because it's on the movie script. It's at this point in the script, this is going to happen. And that's why it doesn't matter what anyone says, they go ahead anyway. And we are seeing a mirror now, increasingly it would seem, of what happened in Iraq, because it's the same scenario playing out, the same blueprint. It's the way these guys work. They are professional hypocrites because they can't tell you the truth or be consistent, because the agenda would fall if they did. What we're seeing now is something I've been writing about for a long time, which is the agenda to attempt to trigger a third world conflict I don't know if I came over when I was talking about this earlier with the technology, a third world conflict to draw in eventually people like Russia and China into a conflict triggered out of the Middle East. And I've been aware of this was coming for a long time. And indeed, you look at things like the letter of Albert Pike, the major
mention that, yeah.
American Freemason, long ago, talking about the 3 world wars that were coming in a letter to another Illuminati guy called Mazzini. And he talked about the first 2 wars. We've had those. The third one, he said, was going to be triggered out of the Middle East by a war, a conflict that would get the Zionists and the Islamic world to mutually destroy each other. And what we're seeing now, this is the real, these are the final kind of scenes in this unfolding drama in the Middle East that Kissinger talked about some weeks ago while the Egyptian situation was going. And of course, we're now understanding the massive role that the American embassy played in Egypt for years before these people's revolutions began, preparing to trigger them. Because what we have here, Jack, is genuine rage at oppression and suppression among the peoples of the Middle East who have suffered under these tyrants, supported these royal tyrants in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in the United Arab Emirates and all the rest of it, and Mubarak in Egypt, supported financially when necessary, but certainly supported through weaponry and high-tech military support. These tyrants have been kept in power and are given the means to suppress their people by the American administration under whichever party, by the British administration under whatever party. And now they are seeking to create upheavals in the Middle East as this next stage happens, in which they want to play Israel off against the Arab countries, bring in China, bring in Russia. Europe and America are already being brought in as we're speaking, and play them off in a third world war. That's the scenario. Whether it will they will pull it off, we'll see, but that's what they want. Been fighting for 15 years that this was coming.
To what extent, David, are we sending arms and aid to Al-Qaeda in a place like Libya, who appears to be the most organized point of reference with this resistance?
Well, once again, you know, there were some SAS people, one of the top kind of inner sanctum people within the British military who were arrested in Libya by some of the genuine protesters and thrown out. I mean, these people, only recently, these people, Britain and America, have been working behind the scenes to trigger this for a long, long time. And like I say, when you've got this genuine rage at the oppression and suppression of these Middle Eastern regimes, as supported by people like Britain and America, you have the tinderbox to set on fire when you bring in your prepared people to trigger that rage. This is what we've seen. They've created the suppression, which has reached a point of rage and resentment among the people, and then they trigger that rage into protest and tell you it's all a spontaneous protest of the people. Well, not at the trigger point, it's not. They're setting these off all over to create mayhem and upheaval in the Middle East with a very, very sinister agenda at the end of it. And again, the African continent going across to the Middle East with Israel and all the rest of it, Saudi Arabia, have tremendous potential, on purpose, of course, to bring these what you might call superpowers, or the major players economically and militarily in the world, together in conflict. That's what they want. It's been long planned, and it's been written in their documents. So what we're seeing is what we've been talking about all these years was coming. What we need to do is throw a spanner in the works, and it's going to be a really big challenge. I've been saying at every opportunity now for like 2 months, people got to get informed. Whether you're protesting in America about the government, you're protesting in Egypt about Mubarak, whether you're protesting in Saudi Arabia or Bahrain, you've got to get informed of how the game is played, what the techniques are, and what the goals are at the end of all this. Because if you don't have those criteria in front of you, those understandings, then you're going to get played like a violin, because your genuine rage at your oppression, suppression, and injustice and lack of freedom is actually going to be used to bring about an end that the people responsible ultimately for that injustice want to bring about. There's so much that goes on and has gone on behind the scenes while people have been watching the game, or Friends or the game show, that we're now beginning to take the consequences for. And some people, not many over the years, have opened their eyes to this. Increasing numbers are now, but for goodness sake, look at how we got into this situation, by looking the other way, by getting caught in all the diversions of life. You look over here while we do something over here and you don't see because you're watching the game or whatever. We got into this situation by not paying attention. All right, there's been a lot of manipulation to make us not pay attention, but the responsibility is still with us. We've also gone through this process of, well, if it doesn't affect me, it's not my problem. But when you do that, eventually it does become your problem. And that's what we're seeing now. So please, people, those that have not been paying attention, those that have been looking the other way, those that have been saying, oh, it's not my problem because it doesn't affect me immediately, look at what's happening as a result of that. We need to change. We need to start paying attention. We need to start getting involved, and we start to realize that everybody's injustice is our injustice, because if it's not, in the end it will be, when they've picked up all these other groups in society, all these other nations, all these other income brackets, colours and creeds and religions. There'll be a knock on your door, and who's going to be there to speak for you? Well, there is no one left, because they've picked all the others off while you were looking the other way saying it's not my problem. What we need to do very, very urgently is to put aside all these irrelevant divisions that are put there to divide and rule us: religion, income bracket, color, creed, culture, and all the rest of it, so that we come together in unity and realize that this is an attack on the freedom, the basic freedom of all of us, Muslim, Jew, Christian, atheist, whatever, and on the children and grandchildren that have to live in the world that we are leaving them. And if anyone thinks their religion is more important than that, or their bloody politics is more important than that, or their income bracket, color, creed, whatever is more important than that, then you are a disgrace. And you are in such a closed, concrete-minded state, it takes my breath away. Now, come on. We've been going along this road for long enough, and look where it got us. We have to change. We have to start putting down the fault lines of division and realize we're all in this together, because they're playing now in the Middle East Sunni Muslims off against Shiite Muslims, just as they've played Muslims off against Christians and Jews off against Christians and Muslims and all the rest of it, like they played Republicans off against Democrats when they're two masks on the same face. We have to change, because if we don't, what they want will unfold, and what they want is absolutely horrific. It's time to stop being children in adult bodies and start to stand up together and face this. And if we do, we can bring it to an end, because we have the numbers. There are 7 billion plus in this world, divided and ruled through all these fault lines I'm talking about, but there is a handful, comparatively, of people at the core who are orchestrating all of this. Now, we, the 7 billion, have not come together in unity because the few have divided and ruled us and set us at war with each other. Economic competition, military competition, competition for dominance of religion and belief system. When we let that go, the unity of the mass of the people can swamp the pinprick number at the core of the core who are orchestrating this. Time is now. Fork in the road is in front of us, and we have no time left to decide which way to go. Well, if you can't put your differences aside, I tell you what we ought to do. Tell you what we'll do. When people are in the concentration camps, and when their children and grandchildren are having every detail of their lives, even their thoughts, dictated by this global tyranny that's unfolding, I tell you what we should do. We should all sit around, before they take us to bring an end to us altogether, we should all sit around and we should have a debate on who had the best religion, who had the best politics, who had the best belief system, who had the most money. That's what we can do. That'd be a great idea, wouldn't it?
And then we can have
that has to happen now.
Yeah.
It has to end now, because if it doesn't, a nightmare scenario is going to unfold. It has to happen now. And if people aren't prepared to do it, don't complain when the nightmare unfolds.